Rock tumbling is more than just chucking rocks into a machine. I'm Marissa McDonald with Pacific Northwest Suburban Homesteading. We've covered picking your tumbler and choosing your rocks in the first two parts of our class series. This week begins the first half teaching the tumbling process itself.
Now we're on to the exciting part of actually loading your tumbler and starting the process. So is everybody, we're good so far? Everybody's hopefully learning something and not staring at me like I have two heads? Okay. All right, so before you load any tumbler barrel, okay, you're all set and ready to go. You want to make sure that your barrel is perfectly clean. For every stage, you want to clean it out. You don't want to get the grit from a previous stage into the next stage. It can ruin tumble. Also, if it's not clean, you may not get a seal on your lid. And remember how I said they sometimes leak? That's usually because there's grit or something that got caught in the seal and it just didn't close properly. If you load it and it's clean and you loaded it properly, you should be able to turn it upside down and not get any water coming out of it or grit or anything like that. So it's a quick and easy test is to turn it and see, is it leaking? I have had that one leak before. It leaked again. And like I said, I think that was the cause of my problems. You can see right where this cylinder leaked, can't you? So that may have been the problem. You also want to make sure before you start that all your gears are good. I mentioned that one earlier that wore out because of the gear design was not well thought out and the gears, the little plastic teeth just stripped. Also want to make sure that your belts are good and your flywheels are spinning properly. Sometimes they might need a little lubrication, just a little drop of oil here on the gears. Never, ever, ever put oil on the belt because then it'll just start sliding on the flywheel. The flywheel can keep going and create friction and possibly burn the belt. Ask me when the last time I did that.
When was the last time you did that?
Well, it was a matter of weeks, not months, the last time I did that. What happened is I was lubricating it and I spilled a drop and I didn't notice it that I spilled a drop on the belt. I thought I aimed and it just got on there and why is it not turning? And so I actually had to put grit in the flywheel to absorb the oil and get it to be able to grip again. I make these mistakes. I do dumb things. I do dumb things all the time. That was not intentionally dumb though. That was just it dripped and I didn't notice, but it can happen. So the first step of the tumbling process. Okay, here we go. Coarse grind. This is for shaping the rocks, grinding off all of these rough edges on your rough. You would start with your barrel. You would fill it between 2/3 to 3/4 full of rocks. Put in some ceramic filler if you need to, but I really would rather you just go do some more rock hounding and fill it with rocks. About, between 2/3 to 3/4. And like I said, as the tumbling process goes, the rocks are going to get smaller. And so you're going to be having less of a fill for each stage. Then you're going to add coarse grit. First stage on your handout there is the very coarse stuff, 60-90 grit. It is 2 tablespoons or 1/8 of a cup because there's 16 tablespoons in a cup for every pound of rock. Like sandpaper, does everybody understand why the smaller the number, the larger the grit?
Because you want to get smaller and smaller scratches on there.
Well, actually, it's
Smaller pieces. Smaller pieces.
Actually, it's the opposite. It's larger pieces. The larger grit, the coarsest grit is 60-90. The finest grit is 600. What you do, it's called a screen. Picture, okay, this is a square inch. Everybody believe me? Square inch. Okay. The coarse stuff is really big. So I can only get 60 grits in that square inch.
Yeah, I thought it was something like
Yeah. The finer stuff, much smaller, I can get 600 in that square inch. So it always seems to be the opposite to me, but it's like sandpaper and grit and everything else. It's how many of the grits you can fit in a screen size, which in my example was a square inch. The fewer grits you can fit in that square inch, the smaller the number, the coarser the grit. So you're always going to start with the small numbers and work up to the big numbers. We sell this in the gift shop. If you need your supplies, they sell it right up front. You never mix grits in either stage either. I saw a video online one time of somebody's like, okay, well, we're going to start with this and let's put in some of the polish at the same time. You just wasted your polish because you're always going to get the results of the coarsest grit. Think of taking 2 pieces of sandpaper. You've got really fine and really coarse, and you do this. You're not going to get the fine results. You're going to get the coarse just wiping out everything. So never mix the grits. Once you've done your 2/3 to 3/4 of rocks, and you've done the amount of grit, quick math, I have loaded this with 10 pounds of rock. How much grit do I put in?
20 tablespoons.
Right.
No.
So 2 tablespoons per pound, so that's 20 tablespoons, or that is 1.25 cups. Be very cautious. I was looking at one of my measuring spoons for this the other day, and it said 1 tablespoon, also said 4 teaspoons on it. There are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. I don't know what that was, but it was inaccurate. That's your measurement. When you've got that, you are going to fill, for stage 1 only, with water all the way up to the top of the rocks. So you've submerged all the rocks. Your barrel is now loaded. You're going to seal it according to, whether it's your wing nuts, whether it's your pipe clamp or your little guy here. And you're going to seal it. And like I said, you're going to turn it upside down to make sure it's not leaking. And if you're all good with that, you're ready to put it on the tumbler and start your stage 1. What you would do is you put it on your tumbler and you start it. Just give yourself 10 or 15 minutes and come back and check it. Because if it's going to start leaking, it's probably going to start leaking within that 10 to 15 minutes. Also, you're going to make sure that it's not overloaded. I have accidentally overloaded it and it was too much for the motor to handle, and it wasn't turning and it was trying real hard. That would have burned out very quickly. Got to watch out for these things. You give yourself a 15-minute, just to make sure it's working right. If it's working right by then, it's probably going to work. You still want to check it every once in a while. I got one that was actually so enthusiastic that it actually threw the barrel off the roller. So it was going and the barrel was sitting over there. I was like, I'm going to turn down the speed on that one. So if it's no leaks and it's running, and you've got it in a nice quiet place that's not going to keep you up at night, instruction books say you're going to run it for 7 days. I say you're going to run it for a minimum of 7 days, up to 2 to 3 weeks, because it was going to depend on the results you want. If you want to preserve the free-form shape of how the rocks look, so they're a little more natural looking, you've still got the peaks and valleys. This has been run 1 week in stage 1. You can still see that it is kind of shaped like the rock was when I found it. It's got some edges, it's got some, dips and everything. But if you want a little more rounded, a little more traditional tumble shape, 2 weeks. So a little more rounded, less corners, less edges. Like so. It's still got a little bit of the shape of it, but it's not as defined, not as sharp, not as defined. It's best to run it for a week, stop it and check it and say, is this what I want? Or do I want to keep going? You could even go up to 3 weeks. If it's really not shaping very well, you might want to add a little more grit. It does, like I say, depend on the hardness of your rocks. If you've got stuff that's up in the higher end of the 7.5 on the Mohs scale, it may take a little longer. If you've got stuff that's a little softer down in the 6.5, it may go a little quicker. So check it. There's nothing stopping you from turning it off, opening it up. Let's do that right now. This nice heavy messy one here is stage 1. I always log what I'm doing because like I said, I usually have more than one going. So I got to remember which barrel had stage 1, which barrel had the pre-polish, when did I start it. So either get yourself a notebook or get yourself some tape. You get yourself a cute little one that has an automatic timer on it. I'm so jealous of this telling me how many days it has. I love that. I wish, but you know. So this has been running in stage 1 since the 20th. So this has been going for a week. It may be shaped well enough, or I may want to take a look. So let me grab a towel because this is going to be messy. I'm not going to dump the whole thing out. I'm just going to take a couple pieces out and look at them. Whatever stage you're in, when you're opening it away from you, because sometimes it builds up pressure and it gets foamy. It gets some rocks release gas, and sometimes when you open a seal and you want to hit the person over there rather than yourself.
Sure you don't have a geyser in the face.
Yeah. So I was gonna. This has 2 layers on it. There's the metal lid, and then there's the rubber liner. So this is what stage 1 slurry looks like. It's really cloudy, it's gray, but don't worry about what color it comes out. I'm referring to some videos that I've seen online where somebody opened it up and they freaked out because they put in white grit, which would be one of the pre-polish or polish stages, but it came out kind of a reddish black and they're freaking out. But you know what? Your rocks are going to shed, and they don't always shed the color that you think they are. Is anybody familiar with a streak plate? You can test the rock. It's a ceramic and porcelain, and you just rub the rock on it and you see what color it streaks. It tells you a lot about the rock because hematite, which is this beautiful silver rock, leaves a red streak. Rhodonite, which is this beautiful pink and yellow black streak. It leaves the most black streak you've ever seen. The color of the slurry doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Some stones are very dirty. Jasper is considered a dirty stone. It puts a lot of color and particles into your slurry. Some are maybe not so much, and your slurry might be a little more see-through. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you get. So I'm going to reach in here. No. I'm just going to grab a couple pieces and I'm going to look at how they are. So yeah, I just coated my hand. Rinse them off. Again, do not rinse this over a sink.
How do you properly dispose of grit?
Well, if you're asking if you want to flush it down the sink, never,
No.
ever flush it down the sink.
Right?
It is non-toxic, so you can dump it on the ground. I like to dig a little hole and pour it in a hole and pour a little bit of gravel and throw some dirt over it. It's non-toxic. You can honestly toss it out.
How fine is it?
Oh, there are multiple stages, so there are multiple sizes of the grit.
Mhm.
I will show everybody some that we'll talk about. There are multiple, different stages,
Right.
but all of it is non-toxic. So you can either pour it on the ground, or another thing you can do is pour it in a container, let it harden, and throw it away.
I was wondering if I couldn't mix it with potting soil.
This is grit
okay.
that has been hardened. This is why you are never going to pour it down your plumbing. This is like concrete. This is stage 2 grit, so it's fairly coarse, but yeah, if you put that down your sink,
You're going to be sorry.
yeah. I like to, if I've got a low spot in my yard, I'll fill it up and it sets up kind of like clay. I'm not sure I would put it on vegetables. Also, I wouldn't put it really on growing plants because it does set up like clay, and plants usually like looser soil than that.
Yeah.
But if you've got a place in your driveway or just a place in your yard, dig a hole, pour it in, dispose of it, cover it up. You are fine. The most toxic thing in the whole thing is going to be your rocks, actually. If you're, tumbling cinnabar, which is what they get mercury from, maybe not. Also, don't pour it in a hill that might accidentally run into your neighbor's yard. You will have a lot of explaining to do. I don't know anything about that. I've got a little grate here and I'm pouring it in the bucket. So do I like the shape? They are rounded, but they're still a little rough. This is some jasper here. This is a beach agate, actually. This is tortella, which is fossil shells. Fossils you can tumble. I'm not quite sure what this is. It's a jasper of some sort. Do I want them a little more rounded? Or am I okay with how they look? Do some little ones. This is entirely personal taste. There's no law that says you have to make them look very rounded. There's no law that says you need to preserve the shape. This is all what you want out of it. And so you get to decide at this point. I'm okay with this because I like the freeform a little more. I also have a lot of slabs, which are, cuts from the saw and everything that were left over. These will never really get truly rounded because they're too flat, but their edges are rounded. I like this. I'm happy with this. I would, at this point, say, I'm gonna dump this out, clean them out, and go on to stage 2. If it wasn't so rainy today, we would actually go outside and do this outside, but we've got the drop cloths. Whether you've done 1 week or 2 weeks, or even 3 weeks, there are certain situations where we do 3 weeks. Cleaning your rocks and your barrel is vitally important. So I've got this is a colander here. Colander, sieve, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to drain it into this bucket here. And you are going to have to do a lot of cleaning. Like I said, you don't want any of this getting into the next stage. Okay, it looks like you're rinsing this off, but you're going to want to do multiple rinses because, the bottom layer, look, I poured all that water on it, but there's still and it's not just pouring water on it and rinsing it. You're going to want to do several of these. I usually, if I was outside to be able to do this, I would actually fill a bucket up with fresh water and dump them in the bucket. We're just doing this for demonstration purposes. So these are generally looking very clean, and the second rinse is fairly clear. As a general cleaning, this is probably ready to go. Just rinsing it isn't enough. You're actually going to want to get in there with a toothbrush maybe to clean out if you've got the little divots, the little cracks, the little crevices. You're going to want to get a pick. You're going to want to get a toothbrush. Dollar store toothbrushes are your friend in this process. These were not cleaned properly. I did this on purpose. This isn't a mistake that I made. I did this on purpose for demonstration. And you see that there's grit stuck in the crevices. In this case, there's even little fillers stuck in the crevices. This is all going to go into your second stage. And if there's grit from first stage going to second stage, remember what I said about you're always going to get the results of the heaviest grit. Now, if there's 1 or 2 particles, it's probably not going to be a problem. But if there's a lot of it, you could actually potentially have problems. It's less of a problem in first stage to second stage, but when you start getting into the pre-polish and polish, it's a lot more important. The other thing about this is once this stuff sets up, concrete, just start coming out. I would have to soak it again and get it all wet again to get it to come out. Rinse, clean, rinse.
So if you come across some rocks like that, can you throw them back in and tumble them again?
Oh, yeah, you can
Is
start
that
them
a
over at
force
stage one.
spray? Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. As a matter of fact, let's talk about that. Aside from, cleaning your barrel and everything very, very well. The only time that I say that the cleaning is not especially important is if you have finished something, the final polishing stage, and then you're starting back at stage one. Okay, if there's some of the fine grit that gets in stage one, that's not going to ruin anything. It's not even going to notice. But other than that, when you're moving along, you must clean it as thoroughly as possible. Take your time on this. Like I said, pick out those little things. Get a toothpick or a walnut pick, toothbrushes, or for the bigger ones, stuff like this. Like that. This is one of my most important tools I have in rock tumbling, a dollar store toothbrush.
Could you use one of those pressure washer things with the textile guns?
You can. Yeah, I actually have one of those. I do like using that. If it's in a crevice, if it's just something like this, that's more of a wide angle toothbrush thing. But if it's something like this one, that you really need to get down in there and your toothpick isn't doing it, yes, a textile pressure gun is great. A deck pressure gun is not so good because you'll shoot your rocks clear across your yard. This is the aforementioned textile water pressure gun. They were originally used for cleaning mistakes made in screen printing. They are a very powerful jet of water, so a couple safety items that you're going to want to remember with this. You're going to want eye protection because it's very high pressured and can throw bits and pieces everywhere. You might want ear protection because they can get a little noisy. And never ever stick your finger in the jet of water. It is as sharp as a needle and it can hurt you badly. So here we go. I'm going to aim this at the little tiny crevices in this rock that have 600 grit pre-polish stuck in the crevices. Nice and clean.
What about boiling them, using bleach, using hydrogen peroxide, vinegar? What are the...
Not really, because what you're doing is you're trying to get this material off. And like I said, it's setting up like concrete and it doesn't really dissolve in vinegar or bleach or anything. That's more for stains. This is actually a coating, almost like paint. That it comes off best with scrubbing, which also means that if you have finished your stage and you dump this out, don't let them sit with the slurry on them. You've got to rinse them off or put them in a bucket of water, because if you let it sit and the slurry is on them, it's going to set up on all of these and you have a mess. You may just have to tumble it for a day or two. There are some techniques that you can use. There's a technique that's used at the end of some whole tumbling cycles called burnishing, which you can do here, which is tumbling for a day with water and powdered soap. The powdered soap, not liquid soap, powdered soap has just enough grit to be cleaning a little bit. If you have a whole load that you need to clean like that, you can burnish it. Either powdered soap like laundry soap, or take an ivory soap bar and grate it into fine particles. You just want something that doesn't have any additives or anything like lava soap, with pumice in it or anything. Just a clean, pure, dry soap and water and tumble it. You can clean them that way too. But still, getting in there with a pick or a brush is going to be your best friend. Because I can't rinse this thoroughly and I know that there's still some grit on it, I'm just going to put it back in the slurry just to keep it moist so I can deal with it when I get home. See that? These are the little bits and pieces that are going to be flaking off as you're tumbling them. So you're going to get a lot of these. I leave them in there. Those are my worker stones. I'm always making worker stones. And then when you're done, they make great aquarium gravel.
Is it better to add new sharp worker stones, or does it matter if you put in smooth ones?
Honestly, the smooth ones work a little better because they want more surface area to contact with the rocks that they're grinding into. So if there's a point, yeah, it's make it that way. You want the rounded, the more the surface area. They just need to be small to get in between everything.
Because of the huge amount of useful information, this portion of the class has been split into 2 parts. Check back next week for the final part of the series where Shauna will finish up the ins and outs of the fascinating world of basic and a few more advanced techniques of rock tumbling. If you missed the first 2 installments on how to choose your equipment and rocks, check out the links in the description below. A special thanks to the Crater Rock Museum for this opportunity to share this fun hobby. I've linked the museum website in the description. I enjoyed my visit and encourage you to stop in if you're visiting Southern Oregon. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, be curious, keep an open mind, and never stop learning.